So when I get to my topic sentences, one common type of propaganda used to sell products is testimonial. Another popular but misleading advertising tactic is card stacking. Perhaps the most common type of false advertising is glittering generalities. So see, there's nothing super fancy about those. They're pretty straightforward. That's what a topic sentence does. It just clearly announces what are we going to talk about in this paragraph. The next part is then explaining to the reader. So I tell you the most misleading is glittering generalities, right? Well, what do I mean by that? Well, do you know what glittering generalities is? Probably most people don't. So I'm going to define what it is. And I'm going to explain what do I mean by misleading and why is it so misleading? And I'm going to give examples, obviously, of glittering generalities. Glittering generalities is basically where I just say nice things. I label something with positive words that my audience, positive words that my audience is going to respond to. Obviously, what makes someone feel positive isn't going to be the same as someone else, right? So I would give examples of that, and then I'm going to analyze and say, why is it important that people guard themselves? How can they prevent from being defrauded if they understand what a glittering generality is? That's what's going to go in my analysis section. And I'm going to repeat that whole process with my next two topic sentences. And then my conclusion. So my conclusion is where I'm going to start. Again, it's my last chance to convince my reader. I'm going to start by paraphrasing my thesis. I'm not going to restate it exactly as I did in the introduction, though. In the introduction, my reader just had my background information and they had what my thesis is, but they didn't have any of my argument or my ideas. But here in the conclusion, they've heard all of my evidence. So they're at a different place when it comes to my thesis than they were in the original. So I need to rephrase it to reflect that. So I'm just going to restate it in a way that shows that they've got through reading my idea. The next section is where we have a synthesis of our ideas. So in the body paragraphs, I've only looked at each one of those three primary points on its own. I've not done any kind of integrating of the 3 points. So this part of your conclusion is where I'm going to take my 3 points, but I'm not just going to remind you what they are and just list them. Instead, I'm going to put them together in a way that shows why all 3 of these together work to help my reader understand the importance of what I'm talking about. Kind of shows them the big picture. And then I'm going to end this with what we call the so what factor. Why should my reader care? I've got to somehow get my reader to understand the significance of what I'm talking about. Right? Now, in the master guide, you're going to see under conclusion different strategies of what you can do. So you can restate your thesis, that's what you have to do. Summarize your key points and synthesize, right? So you show them a broader perspective, you might call to action. And then you can do things like give them a provocative thought. You can tie things back to your introduction. So if you had something that you started in the introduction, you can kind of refer back to it to give some balance. Right? And then all of these combined can lead to that so what factor where you're telling your reader, why should they care? Why does this impact them or things that they care about in a way that they should do whatever it is that you're asking them to do? What you want to avoid, you don't want to introduce any new evidence or argument in your conclusion. You want to make sure that it aligns with, rather than contradicts, what you've said before. That might sound silly, but I remember reading a conclusion once. I'm like, wait a second. The conclusion, this was an argumentative research paper. The conclusion argued just the opposite of everything they'd done in the rest of the essay. And I was thinking, am I going crazy here? It's like somehow they had got in their head. I don't know. It was really odd. It doesn't happen a lot, but sometimes we might end up saying things in a way that almost sounds like we're going back on what we've said, right? So make sure that you're clear there. You want to avoid phrases like I may be wrong or anything that undermines your authority. And finally, you never want to start with in conclusion or to sum up. Those are really cliched, trite phrases that we don't use in written expression. You can use them in speeches because you give your reader verbal cues, but we can see it's the last paragraph, it's the conclusion because it's the last paragraph, right? Okay, and again here I've given you some examples of techniques to use. I've done the same thing in the introduction section, by the way. I've given you some typical strategies for introducing things to avoid, and then some examples of how to do that. And that's been in one of the PowerPoint presentations that I gave you, but it's also here. And then you can see an example here of a conclusion. All right. So that's it. That's what you do in the essay. So if you remember, so if we look at our prompts, we're going to see that all of them require personal experience of some kind. That's something that I'm trying different this semester. So every essay you write in this class, you'll have to base it in some kind of personal experience. So just get ready for it. So here you can see, reflect on 3 specific skills you have developed. Provide detailed examples from your life to illustrate how you learned each skill, the challenges you face, and the benefits you have reaped. So here you're going to say, how did you learn it? What were the challenges and what were the benefits? So that's going to set up, you've got to cover all 3 of those throughout your essay. You can do that by, and I talked about this in the essay instructions, so I'm not going to do a whole lot of this. I'm just reminding you, go back and look at that video because I've kind of done that. I think it makes sense to focus on the skill that you've learned for each individual paragraph, and then you're going to structure your paragraph by talking about how did you learn it, what was the challenges, and then why was it significant? What did you learn from it? The important thing to think about here, though, to understand the key to getting this is that though this is a personal essay, you are writing it for other people. This isn't just a biography of what you experienced. You have to connect it to your reader. So you have to figure out, who can I tell about this? What is important about what I learned that I want to share with someone else that I think needs to hear this? So it's this moment of sharing something that happened to you to make a connection with people, right? And then to share what I learned out of that experience. That's why essays were invented by Michel de Montaigne. They were invented because he had had all of these experiences and he wanted to write and share them and give his take on the world, his take on this issue or that issue, to invite a dialogue, to get people to think and maybe explore or change or whatever. And that's what your job is in writing an academic essay a lot of times, at least in Comp 1, is find that moment, find that connection with someone and like, this is what I could maybe tell them about this that might change their mind, that might help them get out of this rut, that make them see something differently. Okay, well, I look forward to reading your essays. So the next thing is due is more than likely, depending on when you see this, the outline. So make sure you're watching those videos. Again, reach out to me if you're having any problem. I know if you're taking this during the summer that it is a very fast class. You don't have a whole lot of time to stop and think and do things. You just got to kind of get it out there and get done with it. So again, don't wait too late to ask for help if you're struggling. I'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.